Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging deep into the fossil record. We're exploring a late Jurassic dinosaur, one with a really intriguing story, Bothriospondylus.
That's right.
We've got a detailed scientific overview, and for you listening, keen on getting informed quickly but thoroughly, our mission is basically to unpack this dinosaur's history. We want to figure out why it often gets called dubious, and sort of navigate all the twists and turns of its scientific life. It's actually a great example of how paleontology works, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. This isn't just, another big long-necked dinosaur. It's more like a window into the scientific process itself.
How things change.
Exactly. How our understanding evolves as we find more evidence, as our analytical methods get better. And sometimes, like we'll see with Bothriospondylus, a name just kind of sticks around even when the original evidence is, well, maybe less than solid.
Okay, let's kick things off right there with the name itself, Bothriospondylus. It sounds pretty cool.
It does.
It comes from ancient Greek. Bothrion, that means trench, and spondylos means vertebra. So literally trench vertebra.
Trench vertebra.
Yeah. And that refers to this key feature, these hollowed out sides on its vertebrae. They're called pluricles. So right away you see how those early scientists used really descriptive names.
It's quite fascinating how direct that early naming could be. These hollows, the pluricles, they really stood out. They caught Richard Owen's eye back in 1875.
Owen, right. The famous anatomist.
The very same. He's the one who first described Bothriospondylus. The fossils came from Wiltshire in England, specifically from the Kimmeridge clay.
Which puts in the Kimmeridgian age, late Jurassic.
Correct.
And the main specimen, the holotype, is this set of 4 dorsal vertebrae. Catalog number NHMUK PVR 445925.
That's the one.
And there's mention of 3 unfused sacral vertebrae found with them, too.
Yes, associated with them.
And the species name, Sophosis. That's Latin meaning undermined. Again, pointing right at those pluricles.
Exactly. It all ties back to that undermined look of the vertebrae.
It's interesting. The source notes it's often misspelled Sophosis, just one S.
Yeah, that happens surprisingly often in scientific names. Little spelling things can sometimes trip people up, cause a bit of confusion down the line. But yeah, all about those hollows.
Okay, so Owen names Bothriospondylus Sophosis. But then things get complicated pretty quickly, right?
They really do. Because in the same publication, the very same paper, Owen went ahead and named 3 other species under the Bothriospondylus name.
3 others, wow.
Yeah, it really shows you how early classifications were often based on quite limited bits and pieces. Our understanding, our methods, they've been refined a lot since then.
So Owen had a pretty broad idea of what Bothriospondylus was initially. What were these other species?
Okay, first up was B. robustus, based on just one dorsal vertebra, NHMUK PVR22428, found in the same area as a main B. sophosis material.
Right.
Now, that one later got its own genus name, Marmorispondylus, so it went on its own journey.
Right, one down. What else?
Then there was B. elongatus. This was based on a vertebra from Sussex, NHMUK PVR239. Now, this bone, it was actually also one of the original bones used to describe another dinosaur, Ornithopsis ulci.
Oh, okay, so overlapping material.
Exactly. And today, it's generally agreed that this vertebra doesn't belong to Bothriospondylus at all. So you can see the picture was getting messy already.
Definitely seeing that taxonomic complexity kicking in early. And the third one Owen named was B. magnus.
That's the one, Bothriospondylus magnus. This wasn't even based on new material, really. It was a new name Owen gave to another piece of that original Ornithopsis hulci material. Specifically the lectotype, NHMUK PVOR28632.
Wait, the lectotype, explain that a bit.
Sure. So when Ornithopsis hulci was first described, it was based on several bones, the equiplet syntypes, kind of co-equal representatives. Later, scientists usually designate one specimen from that original group to be the official name bearer of the lectotype. So Owen named B. magnus specifically for that Ornithopsis lectotype bone, which means B. magnus is what we call an objective synonym of Ornithopsis hulci.
Meaning it's just another name for the exact same type specimen.
Precisely. Like accidentally giving your cat the same name your neighbor already uses for their cat. 2 names, same individual, or in this case, same fossil.
Okay, so in just one paper, we get the original Bothriospondylus, one that becomes Marmorispondylus, one that probably isn't Bothriospondylus and was already part of Ornithopsis, and one that's just a straight-up synonym for Ornithopsis.
You've got it.
It really sounds like the classification was, well, turbulent from the get-go. Why is getting this stuff right, getting the classification accurate, so important for understanding the big picture? Like, dinosaur evolution as a whole?
That's a really key question. Accurate classification is fundamental. It lets us build a reliable evolutionary tree, the tree of life. If we misclassify something,
Like putting a branch in the wrong place.
exactly, it can completely warp our understanding of how different groups are related, where they came from, how they spread out and diversified over millions of years. It's like trying to do a giant jigsaw puzzle with pieces from the wrong box. The final picture just won't make sense.
Right, and the story definitely didn't stop there. You mentioned Friedrich von Huene.
Yes. Fast forward to 1922, the paleontologist Friedrich von Huene, he looked at the material and decided B. syphasis should actually be Ornithopsis syphasa.
So moving it into the Ornithopsis genus.
He argued that the name Ornithopsis had priority, meaning it was published first and therefore should take precedence. That's a big rule in scientific naming.
So for a time, our trench vertebra was basically called bird-like appearance vertebra.
Sort of, yeah. It just shows how interpretations can shift, even based on the same bones, as ideas about dinosaur anatomy change. But while that was happening, new fossils were popping up elsewhere.
Ah, the plot thickens.
Richard Lydecker, back in 1895 actually, named Bothriospondylus madagascariensis. This was based on much more complete fossils found in Madagascar.
Okay, so suggesting Bothriospondylus might have been more widespread.
That was the thinking, yeah. Maybe this genus wasn't just confined to England.
And didn't Argentina get involved briefly too?
It did. Franz Nopcsa in 1902 assigned a vertebra from Argentina to Bothriospondylus. He later changed his mind, though, and that bone eventually became the type specimen for a totally different genus, Nopcsaspondylus.
Named after him, presumably.
Presumably, yes. And then there was a fairly complete skeleton found in France. Initially, they thought, maybe this is B. madagascariensis.
But it wasn't.
Nope. Turned out to be something else entirely. It got reevaluated and is now known as a distinct brachiosaur genus and species, Weavria.
Man, this is like a taxonomic roller coaster.
Yeah.
Pieces keep getting added to the Bothriospondylus pile and then taken away again.
That's a great way to put it. As more information came to light, things got reassessed.
So the Madagascar material also had its own twists and turns.
It certainly did. Jose Fernando Bonaparte, in 1986, looked at some of that material stuff that had been vaguely called BSP or sometimes lumped in with B. madagascariensis. He decided it was distinct enough to warrant its own genus, Laparentosaurus.
And he designated a lectotype for that too.
Yes, a few dorsal vertebrae became the defining fossils for Laparentosaurus.
Okay, so with all these species being reassigned and the original English find being, well, not much material, where does that leave Bothriospondylus itself? This must be where the dubious genus thing really comes into play.
You are absolutely right. That's exactly it. There was a really important revision in 2010 by Philip Mannion. He looked closely at everything, especially those original 4 dorsal vertebrae from England.
The holotype.
The holotype, yes. And his conclusion was that Bothriospondylus, as defined by that original material, is a nomen dubium, a dubious name.
Why dubious? Just because it's only 4 vertebrae.
Partly that, but also their condition. They're quite sparse, a bit eroded, and crucially, they lack clear, unique diagnostic features, what we call synapomorphies.
Those shared derived traits that let you group things together confidently.
Exactly. Without those distinct characteristics, you can't really place it confidently within the sauropod family tree beyond just saying it's some kind of neosauropod, which is a very, very broad group.
So not enough information to be more specific.
Pretty much. And Mannion's work highlights that scientific rigor, you know. If the evidence just isn't strong enough, it's better to say we're uncertain, declare it dubious, rather than sort of force it into a classification that might be wrong.
But at that point, in 2010, the Madagascar species, Bothriospondylus madagascariensis, was still considered potentially valid.
Yes, at that specific time, Mannion regarded the Madagascar material as potentially valid and distinct from other known sauropods from the Middle Jurassic of that island.
Yeah.
But its story wasn't quite finished either.
Oh boy. No rest for the taxonomically challenged, huh? What happened to the Madagascar species in the end?
Well, in 2020, so quite recently, Bothriospondylus madagascariensis, which, remember, was based on a collection of specimens like NHM R2598, R2596, 2615, and others from the Isle of the Third Formation, it finally got its own official, unique genus name.
Which is?
Narindosaurus devanini. So that material is now recognized as its own distinct type of sauropod.
So the Bothriospondylus umbrella just kept shrinking and shrinking as other fossils were studied more closely and found to be distinct.
That's a perfect summary. As more defining features were identified in these other, often more complete fossils, they were moved out from under Bothriospondylus.
It's really fascinating how this understanding evolves. I saw the overview mentioned Bothriospondylus itself has been placed in various families over the years.
Oh, absolutely. It's been bounced around quite a bit taxonomically. At one stage, it even had its own proposed family, the Bothriospondylus.
Its own family, wow.
Yeah. More recently, perhaps because of some general similarities, there was a tendency to lump it in with Brachiosauridae, the family that includes the famous Brachiosaurus. But as we've discussed, that original material, the holotype, it's just too limited and not well preserved enough. It simply doesn't show the clear features needed to confidently say, yes, this is a brachiosaurid, or even definitively place it in any other specific neosauropod group.
So let me get this straight. As things stand today, the only thing that can technically be called Bothriospondylus is the original type species, Bothriospondylus sphasus.
Correct.
Even though the genus Bothriospondylus itself, based on that very species and its limited material, is considered dubious.
That's the current scientific consensus, yes. Because the genus is founded on material that lacks sufficient diagnostic information, we just can't confidently assign any other fossils to it. It really is a cautionary tale in paleontology about needing good, clear evidence.
Okay, let's just quickly recap those species that got moved, just to nail it down for everyone listening.
Good idea.
Bothriospondylus robustus became Marmorospondylus.
Check.
Bothriospondylus elongatus is now considered not Bothriospondylus and may be part of Ornithopsis originally.
Correct. Not assignable to the genus.
Bothriospondylus magnus was just a synonym for Ornithopsis hocai all along.
Yep. Objective synonym.
The Madagascar species, Bothriospondylus madagascariensis, was briefly linked to the French Vouviervia, but ultimately became Nurindosaurus.
Exactly. Renamed Nurindosaurus thevanini.
And then we have Laparintosaurus, which took some of the other material once associated with the Madagascar finds.
You've got the whole taxonomic shuffle perfectly summarized there.
It really is quite a journey for one dinosaur name.
It truly is. The whole history of Bothriospondylus is just a fantastic illustration of how dynamic paleontology is. Initial finds can sometimes be incomplete, maybe even a bit misleading, and that can lead to this long, winding road of debate, revision, refinement as more data comes in.
So the big takeaway here really is that Bothriospondylus serves as this compelling case study. It shows the challenges you face in paleontology. What started with just a few vertebrae discovered in England unfolded over, nearly 150 years?
Yeah, about that.
Into this saga of scientific argument and reclassification, and it ends up, for now at least, as a nomen dubium. It makes you really appreciate the careful work involved in piecing together the ancient past.
Couldn't agree more. And it makes you think, doesn't it? It prompts a broader question. How many other scientific names, other classifications, not just in paleontology, but maybe across science, might still be revised? Or even completely overturned as we make new discoveries, as our analytical tools get sharper?
That's a really interesting point.
The story of Bothriospondylus, this whole journey we've unpacked, it really forces you to consider the nature of scientific knowledge itself. It's always evolving, right? It's built on the best evidence we have at the time, but it's always, always open to being refined, maybe even radically changed. Makes you wonder, what things do we think we know for sure right now that future generations might look back on and say, they had that all wrong?